Child's Play Math, Unit 9, Staircases. It's quite possible that as your child is playing with the rods during periods of free play or even directed activities, they might have made a staircase that would look something like this. Staircases are really steps to understanding, stairways to understanding, if you like. They are really very potent mathematical constructions. One of the things they do is help fix the mental image of the rods in your child's mind. This is vital for mental work, for quick-fire work, because we do a lot of oral work before we do written work. Let's just construct a staircase to just clarify what I'm talking about. I take out each one of the rods in turn. Click on the rotator. Just rotate each one so they're either vertical position, back to the manipulator. Always remember to do that, otherwise you have to do that before you can manipulate the rod. Okay, let's just build a staircase. You might see your child do this. If you do see them do this, they're obviously beginning to systemize, beginning to think more logically about things. They're putting the rods in a sequence of steps. The difference each time is the white rod, which goes equivalent most of the time when we introduce number to 1. Not all the time, but most of the time it will be equivalent to 1. And you might see them produce a structure something like that. It's far more likely you might see them produce structures that are really far more irregular and haphazard. I'll just pull a few over here and see what I can make out of them. They may be making something staircase for a castle or something of that nature. And you may see them making steps that maybe something like this. Which would be kind of irregular inside. The difference would always be the same. As in the staircase, the difference was always the white rod. The staircase, it's not the case. There's been a big leap here from this one to this one, and they obviously haven't used all the rods, and probably are not thinking of the sequence of rods quite yet. But that doesn't matter, that's fine. I'll just erase these. As I said, we'll look at that later in more depth. At this point in time, children should just be playing with the rods. They should be enjoying themselves, and you shouldn't be worrying too much. I'm just showing you this structure. There's something we're going to be looking at later. But if I was to continue that sequence, the next step would be orange, and to keep the difference to white would be orange and white, because orange obviously is the largest rod I have. I've got a rod equivalent to an orange and a white, so I have to put an orange and a white. So it will be the next step. Well, obviously this time it would be an orange and a red. And then the next step would be an orange, and you guessed it, of course, a light green. Oh. And if I went on long enough and repeated, we get a repeat pattern here, a repeated staircase on a base of orange rods, because we're looking at base 10 essentially, which I described in another part of the video in the notes. If I went to settings, setup, and showed numbers, there you see what's happening. We have a base here of 10, clearly arriving at 10, and this will continue across and upwards because that's the base we're working at, and children can see that quite clearly and quite visually. And here after 10, the next would be 11, 10 and 1. The same sequence occurs when we use the letters, because now it's orange and white, orange and red, orange and green. Next will be orange and pink, orange and yellow, orange and dark green, orange and black, and so on, because we are working with base 10. If you wanted to really have a little go at this yourself, and maybe you'd like to continue that and see the base 10 building, well, perhaps the best thing to do would be to go to the grid, change the grid size. Okay, and now it's much smaller, and you could start down here, and of course you could increase your staircase, and it would have a far more powerful impact by seeing how the orange base builds up. It would take a little time, but it's quite fun. I hope that's been of help. Don't stress about staircases. What's important is that children are exploring, that they're having fun, that they are playing with the rods. We will gather all this experience together. Some children may see sequences quicker than others. That doesn't matter. It's not a race. Children will develop quicker than they would using traditional methods anyway, and once more they'll enjoy it, they'll understand it, and they'll have these images fixed. They also prepare your child for the introduction of number and of place value. They also can introduce the early concepts of fractions. And as you know, our adopted numerical system is base 10, or the decimal system. Now, later on in the program, much later on, we're going to explore bases, different bases. But already foundations are being laid. I don't want you to panic when I say we're going to explore different bases. But the fact is, if children understand how different numerical systems can work, they'll much better understand how base 10 works, decimal system that they will have to deal with throughout their lives. Extended staircases. Well, highly unlikely you're going to get this kind of construction in the early stages when children are just playing with the rods and you are perhaps giving them some direct activities. But it's possible. It's possible that some children might even reproduce this kind of staircase in their periods of free play. If children do, and if they use the orange rods to extend the staircase, what they're unconsciously doing here is creating a visual representation of base 10. Here it is. I've got the numbers on here. So we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11 becomes 10 plus 1. And I actually think that diagram is wrong, so it's because there should be another orange rod there between 9 and 11, obviously. But for the purposes of this, you can see that the base is 10, that we're building up repeating staircases all the time on a base of 10. So as it grows and as it grows, the orange rods would increase and increase, and you'd see the base become orange. And of course, for 1,000, you'd have 10 orange rods going up and 10 orange rods going across. Always the repeated pattern of staircases on top of an orange staircase. And we'll look at this later on. As I say, that's obviously an error there. There should be 8, 9, and when I get to 10 there, that should be just one orange rod on its own, and that should have shifted over. So that's incorrect, but it gives you the idea. Now, initially, this is the much more likely scenario you're going to face with your children. When first introduced to the rods, as we've already said, some children may attempt to make staircases, but they will not necessarily be as neat and tidy as the previous examples. Very often they'll use a smaller number of rods and combine rods to create the staircase. That's fine. This is what it's all about at this stage. It's about trial and error. We bring all the things that they've learned, things they experienced to bear later on as we progress through the program. But at this stage, this kind of trial and error, this kind of scientific approach that children naturally adopt is so very, very important. In most cases, the steps will also be irregular, as in this staircase here. You see that up until we get to the tan rod, all the difference between each step has been the white rod, but here it's gone up a bit. It's gone up by a red rod. Can be dangerous if you're expecting to step down a certain height and suddenly you find that it's higher than you thought. Practical implications you might like to suggest to your children as they're working through these things. But this isn't a problem. We look at this staircases in more detail later. So the fact that they may be building irregular staircases is not a problem. We have a strategy we use later on in the program to overcome this problem and to develop their understanding of staircases. Okay, thanks for being with me once again, and in the next video we're going to consider the importance of mental agility, a very important attribute. So thanks for being with me. I really hope you're enjoying the course. As I say at the end, if you have any questions, please email me. I've got my email address at the end. I'd be more than happy to take your questions and answer them as best I can. Thanks very much. Hope to see you next time.